this was a question that I had while watching. This is a multi-pronged. It's going to take multiple prongs for me to get where I am trying to go. So bear with me. Everyone in this movie was famous or at least somewhat well known when they were cast in this movie. Everyone in this movie also has a real face. So my question, and this movie is now 6 years old, came out at the end of 2019. My question now is like, could we make a Little Women with well-known performers where they all have real faces still? They don't have Instagram filler face. Or if you wanted to make Little Women now, would you have to cast unknown people who aren't rich enough to have their face all filled up? I don't know if you could have both.
That's such an interesting question because people are getting filler younger and younger now.
Right.
Like teenagers. And I'm not going to name any names because I'm not trying to, shame. Like we're all living under patriarchy, but there are some celebrity teenage children, young girls, and I see them and I'm like, your face is full of botulism. And I don't think it's feminism, and we've had this conversation before, to fill up your face with botulism. I also don't think it's actively against feminism to question the gendered ethical questions around that, because it does feel like a question of ethics to me.
I think it's a question of why. Because there was a certain time where we were revering choice feminism, and the stock answer was, it's my choice and it makes me feel good and it's not hurting anyone, then I should be able to do it and you shouldn't question me. My response to that, especially in 2025, is that just because it is your choice to make doesn't mean that choice doesn't have implications for the rest of us. And I would argue that a high proliferation of very visible public figures getting a certain type of work done excessively does have far-reaching implications that are not good. And so I think we should be allowed to discuss that as adults without being accused of hating women or autonomy or whatever.
And I think why I brought up it being and I agree with all of that, is your first example was people are like, it's not hurting anyone. So that's where I'm like, it is a question of ethics. Mm-hmm. So you're saying that you're doing this to yourself and it's not causing harm. It's not hurting anyone else. That's such an interesting, first of all, you are someone.
That is true.
And so that argument, especially when women are the ones making it, like we are socialized to harm ourselves, to starve ourselves, to do what we have to do in order to be beautiful under a system to, protect ourselves. And sometimes by harm, I just mean, we know that statistically women are less likely to apply for jobs unless they meet like every single criteria, whereas men will meet like 2% of it and be like, I think I can do this. And that's a form of harm to ourselves. Mm-hmm. We don't even give ourselves the opportunity. And also, I do think it's hurting other people. I think it's very much generally accepted now that the heroin chic aesthetic of the 90s was harmful to young millennials growing up in that time period. that's a conversation that was happening in the 90s too, actually, was like, okay, we have these incredibly like thin models. We know that they're ill. This was a conversation that was happening at the time the aesthetic was happening. And choice feminism has made it so we can't have the conversation now about filler and about plastic surgery in the way we were having that conversation about models with eating disorders and how that portrayal of beauty was causing harm then. Do you know what, does that make sense?
It does. And I think the other thing I often come up against when I'm just thinking about this myself is that when I'm having conversations like the one you and I are having about this exact topic, I'm always having them with another human being. I'm not blasting in someone's Instagram comments having that conversation. And I think it's much more productive to be having these conversations person to person. But that's just not the way lots of people's brains are wired anymore, in that they do flock to Instagram and Twitter and Reddit and TikTok to have these conversations. And is it helpful for a celebrity to get flooded with comments on an Instagram post about how their face looks fucked up, or people wondering if they have an eating disorder? Is that genuinely productive for that person? I'm inclined to say no, but also I feel like people, us average peasants, are taking that route because we want some kind of affirmation that we're not insane for being worried about how this public figure looks. Because if how they look is normal, then like we're supposed to aspire to it. And there are a lot of people who don't have filler in their faces, who don't get BBLs, who aren't on Ozempic, because oftentimes it's for economic reasons. That's just something they simply can't afford to do, so they don't do it. And so I'm sure there's this struggle of wanting to be proven right for thinking it's weird that they're looking like that, the celebrity. Hence the Instagram comment spamming and the TikToks being like, hot take, but blah, blah, blah's face looks fucked up. So I don't remember what my original point was, but are you following what I'm saying?
Yeah. And I've never commented on a celebrity's social media account being like, wow, you look like a fucking freak. You know, I'm not going to say that. And also because when we're having this conversation, it's with an understanding that we're all living on patriarchy. Under a patriarchy, and I understand why you would make that decision, especially as a woman in Hollywood, where after you turn 35, probably after you're fucking 25, they just turn against you. And we see it happen over and over again. And the other thing is, like, I actually don't really care if you want to get a bunch of plastic surgery. I just think you have to know, like, if you are a public facing person that is going to make the choice to like transform your face, like Kardashian level fucking face transformation, that there are some ethical implications about how that might impact young girls, and people have a right to talk about it, and people should talk about it. So yes, you can make that decision, but you're not making that decision in a vacuum.
Right. Exactly.
And so I think it is important to talk about. And just like you want to do that to your face, and Marin, it's something that you had kind of mentioned before we started recording, but the richer you are, the less I give a shit about your feelings regarding how other people might be judging you.
Yeah.
You have billions of fucking dollars. I'm so in debt. I don't matter to you. You've already shown that. Like, just by being a billionaire, you've already shown that you don't give a fuck about anybody and that you're willing to exploit people to get what you want. So yeah, I'm going to make fun of the Kardashians, not necessarily make fun of their faces, but I'm going to be like, that looks bad to me and weird. And alien-like.
And while it's still the product of social expectations that shouldn't exist, it's also something that you did to yourself.
Yes. And I think this is what it is too. They have enough money where they are like their billions of dollars now makes it so they are making the fucking rules.
Exactly.
They are writing the rules of what is beautiful. Yes, we're all beholden to patriarchy, but Kim Kardashian is fucking writing the rules of patriarchy now, right along with all of the men.
Do you know about the new Ryan Murphy show where Kim Kardashian plays the main character? Do you know about this?
No, I kind of wish I never had to.
Okay, then we don't have to talk about it.
No, I'm kidding. What is it?
Well, it's called, I have not watched this shit, but it's called All's Fair. And it's about these women who run an all-woman divorce lawyer firm. They're divorce lawyers, and their firm is all women. And they're all super fucking rich because they specifically cater to representing women who have been wronged by their billionaire husbands or whatever. So they get these huge settlements. And Kim Kardashian plays the main character. It's got an ensemble cast. The only reason it came to my radar is because it got absolutely scathing reviews.
Shocking.
But it's like way worse than even the typical trashy Ryan Murphy fare of late.
Wow.
And so I immediately was like, oh, I must just investigate what this is. And so I put the trailer on. I was telling Ace about it, and I was explaining this to him. And I was like, we need to watch the trailer. I just need to know what's going on. And so we put the trailer on. And because obviously the crux of a lot of these bad reviews is that Kim Kardashian can't act. Apparently, it's also horribly written. And apparently, even actresses who are good actresses are also giving bad performances in a lot of
Wait, who are some of the other ones?
So it's Kim Kardashian, Naomi Watts.
No, not Naomi.
Glenn fucking Close.
No. What?
Niecy Nash.
I'm gonna throw up.
There's Sarah Paulson is in it, of course, because
Yeah.
she's somehow just
Which I forgive her for anything.
she's so good. She's so good in everything. But I'm sure there's more people. But it's just, I don't know. The paycheck must have been good.
Glenn Close
Glenn Close
was like, let me sign on to this fucking Ryan Murphy shit show with Kim Kardashian. Billionaire Kim Kardashian is the star.
Yeah.
What?
True end times.
Oh,
Recession
my God.
indicator, as they say.
I'm scared.
But anyway, I put this trailer on, and before Kim Kardashian even opens her mouth, you just see her in front of the camera, and it's just like her walking down a hallway or something. And she was already giving a bad performance. She had no screen presence whatsoever, in a way that I don't think I had ever seen before in all my years of watching film and television. I was like, how is it possible for someone to be a bad actor by just walking down a hallway? But she was. Like, and I don't know if it's because she feels uncomfortable being, it's not that she feels uncomfortable being in front of a camera, because her whole life has been in front of cameras, but she doesn't know how to act in a way that summons like real human emotion that is then translatable to the viewer. And I was thinking about it specifically while watching Little Women, because that's just like the antithesis of what Little Women is, where it's about taking the most like simple domestic experiences and playing them as an actor but translating it to the viewer in a way where you're just like, I feel spiritually changed right now. I'm sitting here watching Saoirse Ronan just write at a desk, and I feel so moved. But Kim Kardashian walks down a fucking hallway, and it's somehow the worst thing I've ever seen. And it's the duality of it. She has never had to channel anything like real into her public persona ever in her life. Obviously, she is a human person. She has been married and divorced and given birth. I believe she has felt real human things, but she has never actually had to like put effort into channeling her humanity into her public persona, which is why it makes sense that she would fail as an actress. It was actually making me really mad. I'm getting heated talking about it right now, in case you couldn't tell. Whereas like Saoirse Ronan has been doing that shit since she was 10 years old. I don't know how relevant any of that was.
No, it feels relevant, at least in so far as I have things to respond to. I have things to say in response. Yeah, like, and I think some of that, yeah, I agree. She obviously has, I mean, especially like giving birth, like, Jesus, you're fucking bleeding all over and whatever. Or she had a C-section. I don't fucking know. Either way, there's a human life in your body and then it comes out of your body. That's fucking wild. Right? She, I'm sure, wanted to love and be loved in a romantic way in the ways many of us do and hope for.
She had faith in Kanye West at one point in time.
Well, yeah.
We kind of all did. And then it did not work out.
Yeah. I think part of that too is like so much of our humanity is found in these moments of domesticity that she hasn't ever actually had to really live.
Yes.
How many times has Kim Kardashian had to sit down at a desk and write something? I'm not saying she's never done it, but she has an assistant for that. She doesn't have to go to the grocery store. She doesn't have to think about, can I afford this pair of shoes that I want? She doesn't have to think about if she can afford things ever. Fucking ever. So she doesn't have to live in these domestic spaces where your humanity is constantly being called upon. Every time I go to the fucking grocery store, every time I'm like, oh, I want to buy this book or I want to buy, and I shouldn't say every time, but most of the time I'm thinking about, one, can I afford this? Two, and then all of these thoughts as well about my students who are talking openly in class about how they're having a hard time fucking affording food, and all of the children that American bombs have fucking killed in Palestine. You know what I mean? I don't have money to just like fucking give to everybody and like fix all these fucking problems. And she has enough money to fix so many fucking problems. And she never thinks about it. She never fucking thinks about it because she doesn't have to.
And I think, I wonder.
I'm sorry. I feel like I really went on a rant there.
No, but I wonder if part of this whole Ryan Murphy, make me the lead actress for your legal drama. I don't know what kind of relationship she and Ryan Murphy have. I don't know who paid off who. Like, I have questions. But I almost wonder if part of her realizes that she is a joke. So, maybe if I become an actress, people will take me seriously.
Oh, because she got her law degree too.
But she didn't actually get her law degree.
I thought she actually went to school.
No, I guess in California, which is not true in most states, if you can pass the bar exam, then you can become a certified lawyer even if you don't have a law degree. Because the rationale is, well, you were able to pass the bar, so you clearly know it, because it's not fucking easy to pass the bar. People who go to law school fail the bar all the time. So she is trying to become a lawyer without going to law school, because she can't go to law school because she doesn't have a bachelor's degree. So she'd have to do that first in order to go to law school. Of course, with her money and resources, she could go to any fucking university she wanted to, get her bachelor's and go to law school. But she just failed the bar again And she admitted in an interview that part of the reason she failed is because she studied using ChatGPT.
What the fuck?
Yes.
I was starting to kind of feel bad towards the end of my argument because feel like I was starting to make a case for Kim Kardashian like lacking some humanity. But now I don't feel bad because she doesn't fucking do anything besides be rich.
That's what I'm saying.
And exploit people in order to maintain that wealth.
And so I think she's like, oh, I'll play a lawyer on TV and people will take me seriously because, you know, people take Naomi Watts seriously when she plays rich women on TV.
Because she's fucking good.
The face you made when you said
I'm so mad right now.
But I just think, I don't know. I fear someone like Kim Kardashian is maybe a case study of that it is possible to reach a point of no return. I don't have a lot of faith that if she did enroll in a university program, if she did enroll in the law program, I just don't know if she would be capable of doing it because it would require her to interact with a level of person she's not used to interacting with and put in work that she's never had to put in.
Oh, but isn't she the Kardashian that was like, people just don't want to work anymore?
Yeah.
That's fucking wild.
Truly a time to be alive. It's always a time to be alive, I guess. So long as you're still alive, it's a time to be alive. Should we introduce? Let's introduce our show, shall we?
We have one more thing to say.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And it's sort of tangential, but I feel like it's important. It feels important to me to say because I can hear devil's advocate in terms of, oh, there are other billionaires, blah, 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 Kim Kardashian stans or whatever. And like, I don't give a fuck. If you're a billionaire, you exploit people and everything you do, I think, can be called into question. That being said, I am actually, truly like, I'm not that interested in talking about someone like Elon Musk or fucking Bezos. They're ugly and stupid and bad. We know that. There aren't a bunch of young women out there going, oh, if I could only look like Elon Musk. You know what I like? They don't actually have any stronghold on young teenage girls. Kim Kardashian, she is making the beauty standards for these young teenage girls. That's why I fucking care. That's why I want to talk about her. Taylor Swift. The things that she does, the things that she says. She is a billionaire. She is exploiting people. Also, whether you like it or not, that is just the truth. And so I am interested in critiquing billionaires who are women over fucking the Elon Musks of the world. Not because it's some like internalized misogyny. It's because choice feminism has made it so we have to remind people that just because someone is a woman doesn't mean they are beyond. Oh, what's the Hannah Gatsby quote? Men don't have a monopoly on the human condition. Women are also corruptible.
Yes.
And I think it's important to remember that. Anyway, that's all.
No, that was a good distinction to make. Thank you. Now should we introduce? Okay.
Hi, I'm Maggie.
And I'm Marin. And you're listening to
Girlhood Movie Database,
a podcast where we deconstruct and muse on depictions of girlhood in film, literature, and other media.
A feminist celebration of pop culture, the audacity of youth, and the ways we grow away from and into our bodies, beliefs, and dreams for ourselves and each other.
And today we are discussing
Little Women.
Okay. I'm going to lay my cards on the table right away. I guess maybe not right away because we've been talking.
You've been talking for 30 minutes.
At the beginning of this conversation, explicitly about Little Women, I'm going to lay my cards on the table and say that I think this is the best movie we have covered so far on this show.
Wow, you love this movie, huh?
I love this movie.
Hmm.
I really love this movie. We are talking about Greta Gerwig's 2019 Little Women, her follow-up to her debut, Lady Bird, released December 25th, 2019, Christmas release, perfect. And as for a tagline, it's short. I think it's sweet. What's the thing that Mr. Dashwood says? He's like, when he's telling her about her stories, he's like, keep it short and spicy. I guess maybe this is short and spicy. Are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
Own your story.
Oh,
I think it's great.
yeah, I like that.
It's really great. The DVD cover for this movie, though, dog shit. I have beef.
What is it?
I should have brought it because I have it. But it's just a picture of Saoirse Ronan as Jo, just kind of standing there with like a smolder on her face.
Ew, I don't like that.
It's weird because I remember the theatrical poster, which I thought was quite lovely. It was the four sisters in the living room looking out the window, which is a shot in the movie. And so it's because yes, Jo is the main character, but they should all be there.
That feels like to me the way that marketing execs now assume that people are stupid and have to be like, I want to talk more about this, which I think is like the genius of this iteration of Little Women, which is that Jo, I think, is able to quote unquote own her story in a way that other adaptations haven't been as successful at. Not that they failed, but yeah, it seems to me to be like what this adaptation is doing is different. We'll just have Jo there, but I don't know why the marketing execs sound like that, like little gremlins, like smoking cigars or whatever. But yeah, that feels like we better be obvious about this.
Nothing pisses me off more than when a movie's theatrical poster is really good and then they change it for the DVD release and then make it worse. This is a thing that I have been burned by multiple times in my life. And maybe no one else cares, but I care.
Well, why the fuck would they do that? Because
I don't know if it's a rights thing. Like, it is really confounding to me. I'm like, just keep it the same poster. Unless the original poster was dog shit, make it better.
Right. But it's like Little Women. Okay, just imagine what you would imagine any kind of representative of any version of Little Women that's ever existed would be in your mind. It's all four of them.
Yes.
And honestly, probably Marmee too, but at least all four of the girls. Mm-hmm. And so if I'm walking in a fucking Barnes & Noble and I'm going to go buy my DVD copy of Little Women, I'm not even going to maybe recognize that is what it is. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, it's so iconic. You should see. I don't know.
Here, I'm gonna pull up a picture of it and I'll show it to you. I should have brought it.
Yeah, I haven't even seen it. I don't know why I'm getting so upset about this.
Well, okay, maybe you'll like it. Maybe you'll mount a defense of it.
Yeah. That's actually worse than I thought. Is she in the Dust Bowl? Like, what the fuck?
I think she's on the beach. Because there's a few scenes at the beach. She's in this really drab dress.
Yeah.
Which the costumes in this movie are so vibrant.
Wait, let me see it again. Because I want to see.
She's not happy. She looks like a grieving war widow.
Oh, yeah, I can see that it's like the beach now.
The beach where she took her dying sister. It's upsetting.
Yeah,
like,
it's worse than I thought.
I've been upset about this for like 5 years. Truly.
Little Women, but there's one woman on the cover. Like, it just.
But then
at the beach,
the whole cast listed at the top.
And it's not as if Saoirse was like the star and everyone else was unknown. Like you said, they're all like well known.
Yeah.
What?
There's also this one, which I think is slightly better, but they've weirdly airbrushed everyone's faces.
Oh, God. Of course.
Florence Pugh's face looks weird.
Yeah.
Like no one has pores.
What I like about this one is it's very like 90s.
Yeah, and I love that shot of Joe running.
Yeah.
I get why Laurie is there. He can be there, I guess, but
Well, that's just because it's Timothy Chalamet.
Timothy Chalamet. Would you like to read this log line for us?
Yes.
So we can be on our merry way.
I love the whimsy of this conversation, though.
Yeah,
just following our.
good.
Whoop, whoop, whoop. 4 sisters come of age in America in the aftermath of the Civil War. I mean, it's fine. I'm kind of surprised that there isn't a mention of something that points towards the domestic spaces that they're in, or something that points towards their various romantic sort of experiences. But I don't know. I don't really have any. I was just surprised. It's not a critique. It's fine.
Yeah, I think it does what it does.
Yeah.
It does what it needs to do. Okay, I'm not going to run down a synopsis here. It's Little Women. There's 4 of them. They're sisters. We follow them as they love and laugh and lose and grieve and become themselves. And if you are unfamiliar with it and want to know more before we get into the specifics of the movie, here is your chance to go read Wikipedia.
That's also what started playing in my head. And I was like, wait, that doesn't make sense. But then you started. So.
Okay. Do we want to do some origin stories about Little Women?
Sure.
I feel like most of us have one.
Yeah.
Do you have a prior relationship to Little Women, the novel, the 19th century novel written by Louisa May Alcott, or any prior film versions? I'm thinking specifically of the one from the 90s with Winona Ryder.
And
Kirsten Dunst.
yes. Yeah. The novel, definitely my first encounter with it was when I was like probably in the 4th or 5th grade. And I don't think it was even, no, maybe it would have been younger than that. Because I don't think it was the actual novel. I think it was like an adapted version for like younger readers. But it was also like around the time I was introduced to Anne of Green Gables. So it might have been the actual text. It might have been the 3rd or 4th grade. I just can't remember. And so, yes, I was like made aware of it. I imagine I had seen the 1994, I think it was 1994 version with Kirsten Dunst, Winona Ryder. Who else?
Claire Danes.
Yes. Claire
Susan
Danes.
Sarandon plays Marmee.
Yes.
Christian Bale plays Laurie.
And I don't know. I imagine would have been kind of around the time too. Well, it would have been after Kirsten Dunst was in the Interview with the Vampire.
Right.
Did this film come after that, I think?
Let's do it. Because what is the order between Interview with the Vampire, Jumanji, Little Women?
I think Jumanji was last. I think.
By the way, I saw a movie a few weeks ago that had Kirsten Dunst in it called Roofman, and it was really good.
I'm going to write it down.
She's really good in it. Okay, Kirsten Dunst. If you are like, why are we sidebarring about Kirsten Dunst? Go listen to our Virgin Suicides episode where we get into Maggie's love of Kirsten Dunst.
Yeah.
Acting credits. Interview with a Vampire and Little Women were both in 1994.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And Jumanji was 1995. Little Women was released in December. It was also released Christmas of 1994.
Yeah.
Which makes sense. And Interview with the Vampire was... So that was probably first. Interview with the Vampire was November 11th, 1994. So she had 2 big movies come out very close together.
Yeah. And she was just really getting on the map.
I always forget that she was a child actor
Mm-hmm.
because she's so normal as an adult.
That's a good point.
And
Her face looks like a face.
And she has a real face.
Yeah.
Which is very integral to her performance in the movie Roofman and why she's so fucking good is because she does microexpressions with her face in that movie that I like didn't know were possible, and it made me cry. But yeah, she She's always been doing it. So you had seen the 94 Little Women at some point?
Yes, definitely had seen it at some point. Probably not when it came. I mean, I was 6. So, and not that I wouldn't have been allowed to see. Well, yeah, I just don't have any like recollection. I would have definitely been allowed to see it. I would have been allowed to see Interview with the Vampire. Like that were those kinds of really restrictions. Not according to my mother, who did not appreciate probably that my dad let us watch whatever. But anyway, and they're married, by the way. This is just an ongoing thing. Like, why am I 7 and watching the X-Files? You know, my mom was like, I told you she's too young for that shit.
It's important to expose children to sexy people at a young age.
Yes. Also, my mom would never say shit. She would never say she's too young for that shit. Yeah. Anyway, but she'd be like, I told you she's not ready. Not ready for X-Files. Okay. Anyway, yes, very important to be exposed to Gillian Anderson, though. And David Duchovny. As soon as possible. I guess that's it. And that's why I think of it as like a cozy sort of movie watching, because yes, there's some sadness, of course, but because it's situated in these domestic spaces that just feel very real and home-like and normal, even though I feel like they're always talking about being poor.
They have a cook.
Even as a kid, I was like,
a house.
That's a big fucking house. And somebody's cooking their meals. You know what I mean? Like, I probably saw it when I was like 8 or 9. I think or at least like I have more of a memory of seeing it. And I just remember thinking like, oh my God, if they're poor, what the fuck what are we? So that's always been a little wild to me. And maybe even more so in this adaptation, because the set design is so beautiful, and the costumes and the set design up in the attic, it's just so full of imagination. And anyway, but I guess that was part of their wealth, right? Was their imaginations and their love for each other and the time spent together. But I had never watched this adaptation.
Right.
It's great. And I do have thoughts about it, but for right now, I'll just say this was my first watch of it and I liked it, and then we'll talk more about it. So what's your origin story?
Well, for the longest time, I had only ever read the first half of Little Women, because when I was in 4th grade, my mom gave me a copy of Little Women, and it was this beautiful hardback edition with those glossy, smooth pages. I don't know what that kind of paper is called. It kind of has a smell to it that kind of honestly gave me a headache, but it felt so fancy. And there were illustrations in it. And unbeknownst to me, it was only part 1 of the novel. So in the book, part 1 ends with the dad coming home on Christmas. Beth has survived her first bout of scarlet fever. Lori and Joe are still simpatico. Life is great because dad has come home. Dad has survived his illness and he has made it home for Christmas. And so for the longest time, that's what I thought Little Women was. And I have very vivid memories of reading it on my front lawn after school, taking off a plaid jumper from Catholic school and putting on cutoffs and reading Little Women on the grass. And then I got older and was like, oh, wait, this is only the first half of the book. I didn't know that Beth died and Lori and Joe don't end up together and he actually marries Amy. What the fuck? And so I eventually did end up reading the whole thing. And then I was really excited to see this movie when it was first released. I love Lady Bird so much. Greta Gerwig's first movie that she directed. And so I remember going to see it with my mom. And I just gently cried the whole time. Not even because there were parts that were sad, but I was just so utterly in love with everything I was seeing. And I could just feel how much love had been put into making this world and trying to make that love project back onto me. I was like, this is a movie that loves me and it wants me to love it. That scene near the beginning when Lori and Joe first meet and he asks her to dance and she says that she can't. Her sister told her not to because she like soiled her dress. And her sister said, it's really obvious if I move around. So he takes her to the porch and they dance on the porch and it's really goofy. I just burst into tears the first time I saw that because I was like, I feel so held. Like I'm a little baby tender bird and this movie is just cupping me in its gentle hands right now. So yeah, I fucking loved it. I still love it. I saw it twice in theaters. The first time I saw it with my mom, and at the theater, I ran into one of my friends from high school who was there seeing it with her mom, and then we went out for dinner afterwards. So that was just that felt very on theme. And then I remember I was like, I need to see it again, and so I went with my friends who are sisters, who I had known since preschool. I don't even know how many times I've seen it now, but it was just something that, like, when I'm home, it's like, oh, let's put Little Women on if I'm with my parents, you know? I remember making my dad watch it on DVD, being like, Dad, you have to see Little Women. I made Ace watch it not long after we started dating because I was like, this movie is important. You need to watch it. So I just come back to it every once in a while. And every time I love it in new ways and the same ways. And this time I broke my own record for crying because I started crying before they even danced on the porch. When Amy and her aunt are in the carriage in France and Lori walks by. This is like the very first scene that Amy's in. And Lori walks by and she sees him, runs out of the carriage and is hugging him. And they're so happy to see. I just was crying. And then he kisses Meryl Streep on the cheek and she looks horrified. And I was so sweet. And I just was tearing up. And then by the time they danced on the porch, I was full. I had to blow my nose.
Yeah. Oh. Dude, Meryl Streep as Aunt March, though. Perfect.
So perfect.
I loved it. And I think what this version, okay, so comparing it to like the 1994 version, where I think a lot of the dialogue in terms of syntax, addiction is more in line with the 19th century dialogue straight from the book. And I think that this version is definitely modernized, but done in a way where it feels like the truest adaptation, I think, because it gets at the spirit of it. And I think it does that in a few ways. The first one, and that was the most obvious to me, and I'm just going to compare it to the 1994 version because my relationship to Little Women is probably more with the 90s film than the text itself. Just because, I don't know, Anne of Green Gables won out for me, I guess, when I was that age.
Have you watched Anne with an E?
I haven't.
It's really good. The first episode is a little dicey, but then it gets so good.
Okay. I think that I've watched some of the first episode and it was like...
It's like weirdly, from what I remember, it's just like really grim and
yeah,
it gets better.
Okay. I'll give it another shot.
Yeah.
So yeah, I rewatched the opening scene to the 1994 one because I was curious how it opened. And it opens with their dad, who is a pastor. So he's in the Civil War, but as a clergyman, writing a letter home. So we get shots of him like in this tent, like in the winter, like by candlelight, writing a letter. There's a sick man in his tent. And then interspersed with shots of the girls at home, and Joe is cutting pieces of locks of each of their hair to send to their dad. And then we get this shot of the locks of their hair with like little tags with their names on each one. It's a very sweet opening, but it does center the story around this idea of their lives being on pause until their dad gets home. Obviously, yes, so many things are still happening and they're still, you know, being girls and having these girlhood experiences, but it's the dad's absent is much more present. And it is from the opening scene. Whereas in Greta Gerwig's version, I actually forget that the dad is gone. His absence isn't what is fueling the plot along. Whereas in that 90s version, I feel like that is the case. There's this pining for his return that is more centralized. But in this version, like the opening scene is Joe being a writer and wearing pants and running and
selling a story.
Yeah. There's an immediate shift in who the central figures of the story are. Obviously, it's called Little Women and it's about them no matter what the adaptation is. But the dad's absence isn't immediately felt. What we get first is like what Joe's doing, what Amy's doing. I think we get shots of Beth playing the piano. Meg's buying her fabric. You know what I mean? The first shots we get are of the women doing the things that they do. That is part of their stories rather than just what they happen to be doing in the absence of their father.
Right. That is such a good point. And that also plays into the way that Gerwig does the dual timelines. The scenes that we're opening on that you've just described are scenes that happen in the second half of the novel. To simplify it, there's the adulthood timeline in this movie, and then there's the childhood timeline, and we cut back and forth between the two. And what I realized is that in the adult timeline of this film, the dad is back, technically for all of it. But we don't actually see him in the adult timeline until we first see him in the childhood timeline. And I understand that choice because if he's been in the adult timeline the whole movie, then when he shows up halfway through the movie and it's this big surprise that he's home for Christmas, we wouldn't feel the way we do about it. So so Gerwig has to make the choice to intentionally kind of hide him in the first half of the movie, even though technically he should be there, because then suddenly after he appears in the childhood timeline for the first time, he's in the adult scenes, like Beth dies and he's there, you know. And I had never realized that before. But I think what you're saying holds still in that when we first see them in this movie, they are adults or nearer to adulthood, and their dad is technically around, but he is not the central figure in their lives, even though his presence is nearby necessarily, because they are all dealing with their own social and economic and emotional turmoils. And so you immediately sort of care about their individual situations. And then as the movie unfurls and we go back to childhood where they're more of a single unit, it's like them as the focal point, not their absence, the father's absence.
Mm-hmm. And thanks for pointing that out too, because yeah, Gerwig does kind of physically remove him from much of the film as well.
Like when Joe comes home, she starts the movie as an adult in New York. She gets a letter from her mom that's like, Beth is not well, you need to come home. And she comes home and he just isn't there. We don't actually see in hindsight. It's kind of like, well, shouldn't he have been excited to see her? So it's just a logistical choice.
Yeah.
That the movie makes.
Because honestly, like I was a little confused at first because I was like, oh, I haven't seen this in a long time. I didn't read the whole first part, but I read like the first like couple chapters to remind myself of some things. And so when he was just like so absent, I was confused at first. I was like, wait, what timeline are we in? It took me a minute to get my bearings.
Right.
but in a way that I liked.
Yes.
Because I felt like I was being like reintroduced to the story. It felt so new to me. It felt so new. And I think especially with an adaptation of Little Women, how can you reimagine that story in a way that feels like fresh and feels like you're encountering it for the first time? And Gerwig has done that remarkably well.
I know. I have actually read the script for this movie.
Wow.
This was right after I saw it for the first time. I was like, I must find this script online. And so I read it. And if I recall correctly, the adult timeline or the present timeline and then the childhood flashback timeline were like different colors. But she literally wrote, so one person's dialogue, it was meticulously planned which words people's dialogue would overlap on. There were slashes to indicate, okay, once she hits this word, then you start talking with this word, because there's so much, those scenes of the four of them squabbling in the living room or whatever. I think you get this impression watching it, but then especially reading the screenplay really solidified it, which is that she really approached it from a writer's point of view first, I think, and then piggybacked off that into being the director, which I always really admire. And I think too, what you're saying about it feeling fresh is that I have often had this feeling where when we reach near the end of the movie and Beth has died, but Jo is still at home and she's grappling with, should I have married Lori? Why do I feel lonely? What do I want to do with my life? And Friedrich, her colleague, boarding house mate, whatever, he like comes to visit. And in the book, he comes to visit and he's the guy for Jo because we must get Jo married off to someone. And when that starts unfurling in the movie, I always feel a little tired. I'm like, okay, I'm feeling the runtime a little bit because it just doesn't feel right to me personally. And this time I was like, wait, perhaps this movie wants me to feel a little tired at this point, to feel a little disappointed. Because when we then cut to Jo in the publisher's office and they're arguing about the novel and like, why didn't she marry the neighbor? And like, because he married her sister. Okay, but then who is she going to marry? She said the whole book she doesn't want to be married. We want to see women married, not consistent. I have this memorized. Can you tell? And then you realize what is the true ending of the novel is maybe not the true ending of this film. It's so fucking invigorating when you cut to her in the publisher's office arguing about it. And then you realize like, oh wait, maybe this isn't actually happening. Maybe this is just what she's doing for her novel in order to get it published. Gerwig making that creative choice is inspired, I can only assume, by letters of Louisa May Alcott's that have been published where she talked about the dissatisfaction of having to marry Jo off at the end of the novel. So I'm sure there's some like person who thinks it's like this desecration of Alcott's vision. And I'm like, maybe not, actually.
I'm glad you brought this up because I definitely wanted to talk about that ending for sure. And I think the ambiguity there is purposeful. Gerwig is a thoughtful filmmaker and writer, director, whatever. It also allows for some meaning making, control. It allows for the audience to kind of decide on which ending they prefer. I guess that's what I'm saying, right? Because I really watched it as, okay, this scene of her and Friedrich kissing in the rain under the umbrella is just what she had to write. It's just what she had to write because that's what the publisher wanted. And so the only reason we get the scenes of it is because that's what the book ended up being.
Right.
Not because it's what happened. And yeah, we have these letters of Louisa May Alcott. Like we know that her vision was different. And also, we also know that this book is largely autobiographical with Alcott playing Joe in a sense, right? Or as like her writing herself into Joe's character, I should say. All of that is somewhat conjecture, I suppose, but I think it's generally acceptable to at least say.
You mean that Joe was inspired by Alcott? Joe is kind of a stand-in for Alcott?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Because she also had sisters, right? She had one of her sisters that died, but Alcott never married. And if Joe is this sort of representation, fictional representation of her, yeah, she didn't want Joe to get married because she was writing herself into this story. She was writing her story, even though it was fiction, technically. She was being asked to change her story. And so that's what makes the tagline also so smart. Own your own story. Because Gerwig allows Alcott to own her story in this adaptation.
Yes.
In a way that publisher, in real life didn't allow her to. That took me a really long time to explain. Sorry, May.
No, you're fine. Because yes, it is ambiguous, technically, in this movie. Did she actually marry Friedrich? Or is that just an ending she invents for her novel to get it sold? I interpret it as being an invented thing. But I think regardless of how you interpret it, though, I love that the final thing we see is her watching her book be physically made. There's this just beautiful scene where we literally are watching a bookmaker put the book together. And she's standing there on the other side of a window and she's watching it. And then he hands it to her after it's been bound. And that's where we end. And so even if you choose to interpret the Friedrich third act whirlwind romance as something that actually does happen to the character of Joe in this movie, it's not the sole thing that is defining her life.
Well, it's not the ending.
It's
literally.
not the ending. You have a lot of life to live after you get married, if you get married. And you should have a life that is fulfilling to you in ways that are both related to and not related to your marriage or your children. And so we get to see her have that. And I think that is really beautiful.
And one of the scenes very shortly before all of this, before Friedrich shows up and everything, we get this scene of Joe and Marmee alone in the attic.
Yes.
And Joe's talking about how she's lonely. This makes me teary-eyed. Like she's talking about like loneliness, feeling lonely. And a lot of the reason she starts doubting the decision she made about saying no to Laurie, who had proposed marriage to her years before, is because now she's lonely. And she said something like that. What's the line? You probably know it.
Well, which one?
About like, she's like, well, I want to be loved.
Because she's like, maybe I was too hasty in turning him down. And Marmee goes, well, do you love him? And Joe says, I would care more to be loved. And Marmee says, but that is not the same as loving. I didn't realize I had it.
I feel like I just knew it was in there.
I did just watch it last weekend. And yeah, and Joe talks about, I am lonely and I've always felt so happy being with my family, but now I'm back in my family home and I feel lonely. And why do we act like women are most or just fit for marriage when they have minds and they have imaginations and they have passions? And it's a very emotionally conflicting time for her.
And I think that scene is so, it might be my favorite scene in the whole movie.
It's really good.
For me, in part, it's definitely the scene where I was most emotional. And that's like trying not to be emotional right now thinking about it, because they're just like so relatable. Joe is an adult at this point. She has left. She has built a life away from her family, in part to help her family financially, but still she's separate from them in this way. And she's grown out of childhood, which that's another beautiful scene, but I'm going to try to stay on top. Stand task. And so she's returning to her childhood home in the attic, in this space where her imagination was like most alive. And this adult version of her, like talking to her mom about how she feels lonely. It's a conversation that I had with my mom when I was an adult, when I found myself as single. And I liked being alone. I liked being single. I felt so free for the first time. I could finally like do anything I wanted to do. I had an autonomy I didn't have before because also of the nature of the relationships that I had been in, if you can call some of them relationships. But why I feel like that scene is so important is because the way that it ends with her in the publisher's office, interspersed with these scenes of her kissing Friedrich in the rain and the ambiguity there. Did this just happen in the book? Did this happen in real life? Blah, blah, blah. Leaving it open to interpretation. I feel like I'm kind of contradicting myself from what I said earlier, which I still think is true, but this is more true, which is that I think Gerwig is giving us the permission as women, but Jo in particular, to also be validated in her story maybe ending with her falling in love. That would be fine. One is not better than the other.
Mm-hmm.
One does not necessarily mean you are more empowered than the other one, or you have more autonomy than the other one. Because for me, in my story, even though I was having these conversations with my mom about like how I just felt so alone sometimes. And I thought about moving back home because I was by myself. I didn't have any family around me. My story did end up with me finding a partner, which was not my intention. And I don't have less autonomy because of that. And so I really appreciate that Gerwig doesn't make that statement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No.
Well, when you didn't want to get off track earlier, when you were talking about the childhood ending scene, are you talking about the scene between Jo and Meg before Meg's wedding? I also really love that scene. And something that really got me this time is that they're having that conversation. It's the day of Meg's wedding. And Jo's like, don't get married. You should be an actress. I can write plays and you can act and we will be interested. What does she say? You will be bored of him eventually and we will be interesting forever. Which is a very good line. Jo is very good at saying these very rhetorically compelling things on the fly. But Meg responds, she goes, I love him. And she just says it so, like, she's so sure. And we often talk about, loving a person isn't always enough. There are lots of other things that come into play when it comes to a romantic relationship having longevity. But like, sometimes at certain moments, loving him is enough. And I don't know why. I had never fully thought about it, that moment, that scene in that way before. That's all Jo needs to hear from Meg. And she's like, yes, I know. I can't believe childhood is over. And Meg's like, well, it had to end sometime.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love too, though, that love isn't flattened by maybe this impulse to, well, in line with what you were saying, yes, sometimes love is enough to help us make a decision, and it can fuel us, right? To stay in a relationship and do like the work that it takes sometimes to be in that relationship. And what I mean by flattened, it's not like we just get that scene and that's it, and we never see Meg question her decision. Because in choosing to marry, what's his name? John
Brooke.
and choosing to marry John Brooke, who did not have very much money, she's not able to buy all these beautiful fabrics and all the beautiful things that she wants that other women she knows are able to buy because they have more money. And we see her and John have a conversation about that. And Meg's like, yeah, it just kind of sucks. I kind of wish we had more money. And maybe she is feeling she's questioning her choice, which is fucking normal in a relationship, to have to step back and say, well, I made this decision to love someone. Does it still feel right to me? Would I rather have these beautiful things? Because the answer could be yes. Some people marry for money, and that is separate to me from a conversation about plastic surgery. I feel like it could be easy to conflate the two. But like, if you marry someone because like they have a lot of money and that's your relationship, honestly, more power to you. Okay. Take their fucking money. But anyway, even with that scene, she chooses him.
Especially thinking about the novel, which I think is a lot more didactic than this movie is. And the characters feel a lot more, they all symbolize something. And that's less a factor in this movie, I think. Like Meg is very much Marmee Jr. kind of. And, you know, she's beautiful and she's a little materialistic, but she ultimately just really wants to like be married and have children and keep a home. And she does all those things here. But it's not like, oh, she gets married and is the perfect little wife and the perfect mom and her life is blissful. It's exactly like you said with that scene where they talk about she buys this fabric that's really expensive that they ultimately can't afford. And her husband, he doesn't lose his temper, but he's just stressed about money.
Yeah.
He's like, oh God, this is stressful because they have twins. That's the other thing is she's like, yeah, I want to be a mom. But then she popped out twins. I think they're twins.
I don't
right?
remember.
Maybe I'm totally imagining that, but I'm 99%
She has
sure
more than one kid.
She has two. And maybe it's because their names are Daisy and Demi. So maybe I'm just assuming they're twins because of the alliteration. But she's got two kids though.
One boy and one girl.
Two kids is more than one kid. So if you had one kid and then you had two, you have doubled the amount of kids you have, which I'd imagine is a lot to deal with if you are a parent, especially if you don't have a lot of money. So the point I'm trying to make is that Gerwig is not envisioning this quote unquote traditional domesticity as this blissful haven. But just because it's not a blissful haven also doesn't mean it's torture.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it occupies this middle space where there are struggles and there are things that are hard. But if you are in a true partnership, then you work through those things together and the relationship becomes stronger as a result.
Yeah. Well said.
Thank you. I feel like we've done like a little Joe section and then we just did a Meg section. I feel like now we just need to go sister by sister.
Okay.
I don't know. It just seemed like that was what was happening.
Yeah. So Amy, let's go with Amy, who is so annoying to me all the time. In the 1994 version too. Also, I don't.
Do you think she's annoying in this movie?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Yeah, I'm irritated by her. I also have sisters. I have two sisters and I'm the middle sister.
Okay.
And I find her particularly cruel and bratty in ways that I'm like, man, me and my sisters, we've done some mean, horrible things to each other, but Amy just never grows the fuck up. Just so self-entitled. I would have let her stay in the ice. I'm kidding.
Okay.
She burns Joe's fucking writing. It's so,
I know.
The cruelty of that, like as someone who was like a writer as a child,
yes,
I cannot imagine. And then she's just like indignant about, like, I don't know, man.
Okay. Can I say my thing and then you can respond?
Yes, go for it.
Okay. In the book, I have no patience for Amy whatsoever. When she burns Joe's manuscript, I cannot forgive her for that act. Amy, up to that point on the page, I don't really see much redeeming in her. She is whiny and naive and spoiled. She's the youngest. And then the novel never does enough work after that for me to forgive her. She ends up with Laurie. Okay, fine, whatever. I don't have strong feelings about that. However, in this movie, I love Florence Pugh as an actress. I think both generally and specifically in this movie that I immediately like her more the second she shows up on screen.
Mm.
I think it helps that when we first meet her, she is more of an adult and is displaying some maturity. And then we see flashbacks where she's much younger and different. So I find it a lot easier to forgive her when she burns Joe's manuscript watching this movie in a way that I have never felt reading the book. And I do think we see her grow and change in this movie. And I like her a lot more in this telling than on the original text.
Yeah. And I can see that. I don't have any real feelings about Florence Pugh, so that didn't really impact my experience. I think she's good. Why I brought up like having sisters, a lot of this is my bias about what I would have been willing to forgive and I never would have. And a holdover that I do remember from reading the book when I was younger, and because it was so long ago, I always got the sense that whatever sister Amy was representing in Alcott's actual life is a sister she was never actually able to fully get along with or reconcile with. And this is me reading into it as a sister.
Pure psychoanalysis.
Yeah. And so with Amy, I was like, Gerwig, you're making her, because also then she just, I mean, I get it. Like she's known Laurie like forever, but suddenly they're like, oh, actually we've loved each other forever and this is it. And let's get married and whatever. That's fine. But she didn't really seem to change at all to me.
I mean, she changes in the fact that, I don't know, I'm endeared to her in that scene, like I mentioned earlier, when she sees Laurie and she jumps out of the carriage and she says hi to him and they hug. I just find that endearing. And then I immediately respect her for when he shows up at the ball and he was supposed to meet her at her hotel and then he didn't come. And then he shows up and there's like these gaggle of girls on them and he's drunk and she tells him off. And there's a like pragmatism to the older version of herself that does not exist, I think, in the younger version. And so the interplay between those two and seeing them eventually meet in the middle, I find very effective. And so by the time we reach the point when she tells Laurie, you're being mean, you don't get to talk to me like this, not when I've spent my whole life loving you, I feel it so deeply. I really do. And I really just think it's like all Florence Pugh for me. Because, okay, case in point, this is so random that I'm bringing this up. But have you ever seen the movie To All the Boys I Loved Before, which is a teeny? Okay. It's based on this book series that I read in probably middle school. And the main premise is that it's this girl, her name is Laura Jean, and every time she has a crush on a boy, she writes him a letter and then she never sends it. It's just like a thing she does to emotionally cope with having these unrequited crushes, okay? And when she is in high school, when she's 16, her youngest sister, Kitty, I fucking hate Kitty. Okay. Kitty finds the letters and sends them to all the boys who were never supposed to see them.
Oh, damn.
So then she goes to school and these boys are like, I got this letter for you in the mail. And it's so awkward and she's mortified. Okay, as she should be. And I remember reading that when I was young and being like, I ain't ever forgiving Kitty for this shit. Ever. This is unforgivable to me. Kind of in the same way that Amy burning the manuscripts when I'm reading this Little Women novel. I'm like, this is unforgivable. And then eventually they adapted it into a movie. It was a book trilogy. So they adapted them into movies. And I remember watching the first movie. And by that point, I think I was in college. But I was like, oh, I want to check this out. Nostalgia, you know. Perfectly serviceable movie. Still fucking hate Kitty and can't forgive her for sending those letters in the mail and exposing her sister's crushes to the world. And I think it's purely just because if I had found the actress more charismatic or effortless or something, I probably would have forgiven her.
Yeah.
But here, because it's Florence Pugh, and I think she's just so good, I can forgive her. Good job, Florence Pugh.
I will never forgive you, Florence. Yeah. I can't. My psychological conjecture overrules all of any kind of performance that seeks to redeem her in some way. And it's not even like that she's the youngest that I have an issue with, because this isn't a like direct correlation to like my sisterly relationships by any means. I'm not saying my younger sister is like Amy or anything like that, but just the relational elements of like having sisters and fighting. And I'm still fucking pissed that my older sister took my platform, Mary James to college with her, and then brought them back and all like scuffed the fuck up. I'm still pissed about it. Like, I specifically said, you can take anything I want, just don't take these. And I hid them from her, and she fucking went and found them and took them. I still have not forgiven her for that. So if somebody would have taken my fucking manuscript and put it in a fire in the 19th century when there was no other fucking copy, I'm going to let you die of hypothermia while we're ice skating. Okay?
I can't say you're out of line. And as someone who is also a writer who meticulously saves every draft of everything I write, has a fucking filing cabinet full of like shitty drafts, I think the devastation would be so large that I can't even comprehend it, which is why I'm able to sit here and be like, but Florence Pugh is so charming, so I guess I can forgive her, because I can't actually comprehend how terrible it would be. If Ace did that to me, I would immediately throw all his shit on the porch and be like, okay, we're done, move out.
It's like, but staggeringly cruel.
In this fictional rendering, I just, against perhaps my better judgment, I'm like, okay, Amy, I see your growth. I'm happy that it seemed, became a better person.
Mm. Yeah.
Because I think because the other thing about Amy in the book is that she's bratty and whiny. She also wants to be rich and marry rich. And so she sort of gets to do both eventually. She doesn't really outgrow her brattiness in the book from what I can remember, but she also gets to marry rich and she gets to marry Laurie. But I think here the movie is more purposeful about making it so that the more aspirational aspects of her personality are, there is logic to them, as opposed to them just being frivolous or self-absorbed.
Yeah. And that makes sense, right? Because, and we hear this phrase in particular several times, in that marriage is an economic proposition. It still is, quite frankly, in 2025. Not necessarily in the same way, right? More was at stake back then as a woman, if you were unmarried. So, well, who fucking knows what? Anyway, everything's on fire. But even with her painting, okay, in this book, she's like, oh, I was a bad painter. I just give up. I'm just bad at it. It's like the one thing besides being rich and fucking whiny that she was aspiring towards is to like be a painter. And then she's like, I'm bad. Been trying so hard for like 2 fucking weeks. You know, I think it was longer than that, but
It's her whole life. She got beaten by her teacher for doing little sketches on her chalkboard when she was in school.
But like, how old is she when she's in?
I don't know, because there's a 7-year difference between the flashback timeline and the present day timeline.
So she's still like, I don't even know if she's 20 years old yet. Let's say like she's 20 and I don't even think she's quite 20. And you're like, oh, I'm just bad at this. I've been trying so hard for so long. You're still barely an adult. This is my Kim Kardashian moment where I'm like, people just don't want to work anymore. Like, it's not all talent. Yes, I could write and I always wanted to be a writer and I always was a writer and I wrote a lot and I wrote a lot and I wrote a lot. But I wasn't just fucking randomly was able to write. It's something you have to work at. And she was not willing to she was not willing to be bad at something for long enough to be good at it. Instead, she just married rich and was like, now I'll just paint for fun. The pressure's off. That's what I think about Amy.
I don't think I agree.
That's fine.
I know it's fine. Well, I think being at that age and being a person who has artistic ambitions, you really do hinge on the examples of young artists who made it. So I understand where her self-doubt is coming from. And is it kind of rooted in this delusion that, oh, I should have been a great artist by now? Yes. But also, what person who is a creative doesn't experience? You have to experience that kind of delusion for yourself, I think, in order to realize, oh no, this is just 90. This is like doing grunt work for the sake of the work, and then eventually being lucky enough that someone will like buy your painting or your story or whatever. Because I think I really love that conversation she and Lori have in the studio when she's like, maybe I am of middling talent. And it seems like you're looking at that from the perspective of her giving up before she's actually really tried. Would that be correct? And I think I more look at it as her just assessing what are my actual options for what my future can be. Because if I don't become a world-renowned painter by a young age and make enough money to support myself, then I have to get married. But if I wait too long to figure out if I'm a world-renowned painter and I'm not married by the time I'm 27 or whatever, no one's going to want to marry me then. So what am I going to do? And I just think, I don't know, when she tells him I want to be great or nothing, I think that's a fucking great line. I hold myself to a very high standard when it comes to the things that I create, which sometimes you need to not do. You just need to do the messy experimentation stuff. But I also had to learn that. So maybe she hasn't learned that yet. I guess I ultimately think it's respectable to want to produce the very best that you can, and also at the same time not be confident that you're capable of producing it. I think it's like a brave thing to admit to another person, which she does.
I mean, I also just think that's being an artist. I think every artist is like, fuck, maybe I'm just not good at this, but maybe I could be. But it's like part of the cycle of like creation.
Right.
I'm not willing to give her the benefit of the doubt that she's going to continue trying to be great, though. That she is going to really put in the work in order to continue, which is fine. That's up to her, but she's just very self-pitying to me. And I totally agree with Joe when Joe's like, Amy tends to like get out of the hard parts of life.
Mm-hmm.
So now, yeah, like she's like, what am I going to do if I'm not good at painting? If I can't be an artist, I have to marry well. And then she still fucking marries well. You know what I mean? So now she doesn't really have to worry about it, which is fine. I just think her burning the manuscript was character defining, and I just can't get over it.
And that's fine.
Everything else she's done is just because, again, I have done some very cruel things to my sister, and they've done cruel things to me, but never would they take a journal of mine and throw it in the fucking fire. Like things that mattered most to us, and just fucking destroyed them. And then say, oh, it's because you were getting more attention. I mean, we've definitely ruined some things of each other's, but that was just different, man. It was just different. And I think Alcott, whatever sister that was about, I don't think she forgave her either. So also the reason I said, oh, it's fine. Like when you're like, I don't think I agree, was because I felt like I was getting really aggressively against Amy. And I was like,
I mean, even
like,
if you are, it's fine.
I was just like, don't think I'm going to like jump across the table.
She's
and be
probably arguably the most divisive character in this story.
She's meant to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
like this conversation, I feel like is meant to happen.
And maybe I don't have sisters. Maybe this is also something, not to be like gender essentialist about it, but well, you have a brother as well. But yeah, I just have one brother, and he and I were so thoroughly uninterested in like what each other were doing, that he would be like, what? You have journals? He wouldn't even know they were journals he could burn if he wanted to.
Yeah. No, the same. My brother is just, I don't know what he was doing. He didn't know what I was doing.
All my brother cared about was basketball, and there was no way for me to destroy that for him because I was weak and puny. So I think it's good we can have this spirited discussion.
I didn't actually know that I cared that much.
That's okay.
I mean, I knew I didn't like her.
I mean, I care deeply about Beth, and no one gives a shit about her. So
arguably the best sister.
Thank you.
And who is it that says she was the best of us?
Amy says
Amy,
that.
I think.
When she comes back after she's died. Yeah.
And when Amy says that, I'm like, yeah, you're goddamn right, Amy. You're the worst. And you're the worst. And you're the worst of us.
Okay,
Anyway.
Amy does have that great line at the end after Aunt March has died and left Joe the house. And Joe's talking about how she wants to open a school there. At that point, Mr. Dashwood doesn't want to publish her novel about their life. And Joe's like, well, I don't think anyone is interested in domestic stories or whatever because they're not important. And Amy is the one who's like, but maybe if you write them, people will realize that they're important.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe Gerwig was like, people be going into this movie with a vendetta against this child. So I need to give her the wisest lines so people will like her. And the propaganda worked on me. That's all I'll say. But when I went into this movie, I didn't really have strong feelings about Beth. People in just sort of pop culture lexicon even, it's always like, oh yeah, she's the sister who dies. She's sick and she dies. That's her personality. And I immediately, when I watched this movie for the first time, it immediately became clear to me that that's not how Gerwig views her, and that's not how Gerwig wants us to view her. Because like you mentioned, that very first scene we see of her, she's sitting by herself playing the piano. And I think Eliza Scanlon playing Beth in this movie, it is a performance that I can't even articulate why I love it so much and why I find it so meaningful, other than she just imbues Beth with sensitivity that is very sweet, but then also we see that there is like hardship that Beth must endure because of her personality. When Marmee is gone and Beth's like, we need to bring food to the Hummels. We haven't seen them this week. And every other sister makes up an excuse not to go. And you just see in her face how frustrated she is. And it's really, really important to me that we see her be frustrated with her sisters for even just a split second. Because she's like the responsible one. She's the one who doesn't complain about doing chores and always sees the positive side in things. I just love it. I love her performance. I love Beth's rendering in this movie. I love the way that Mr. Lawrence is rendered in this movie, especially. I think it's a significant improvement to the book. I just rambling. You should say something so I can get my bearings together.
Okay, when you mentioned that look that she gave when all the sisters are like, yeah, we're not going, which is ultimately what gets Beth killed.
Yeah. Like her sisters kind of kill her.
Yeah, because she goes alone and gets scarlet fever and from the baby, and that's what she dies from. So, but bringing up that moment of like where we see in her face, she's very clearly frustrated. We get a little bit of that. I'm not going to bring it back to Amy entirely, but we get a little bit of that when they're sitting at like breakfast in the morning and Joe's still mad the day after the burning of the manuscript. Yes. And Amy's like, is she ever going to forgive me? And Beth is like, well, what you did is really fucked up.
Yeah.
Even Beth is like, that was fucked up.
That is a very good point. My thesis on Beth, and I'm biased because when I was in graduate school, I had to write a 20-page critical essay. I took a class called, what was it called? But it was about girls fiction. It was a survey of girls fiction across many years. So we read lots of old stuff. We read lots more contemporary stuff. We, of course, read Little Women. And for my final project, I had to write a 20-page paper, a critical paper, about one of the texts that we read. And I wrote about Little Women, and I specifically wrote about Beth and how she is a much more self-determined character than anyone has ever fucking given her credit for. And the main gist of my argument is that I think Beth understands everyone in her family so much more than they understand her, which is really sad if you think about it, but I think makes her a really important character.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And self-determination is the like perfect word, because what I was going to say about her, or how I would describe her, the phrase that has been coming to mind for me has been, she has a sense of self, just naturally seems to know who she is. And what a gift. And not only to know it, but then to live by it. We don't know necessarily like what she's thinking about in terms of like marriage or children, or right, because all the other sisters are either like moving towards or against those things, whereas Beth, she's playing the piano, she's moving towards music, she's moving towards, I don't know, there's a reverence about her presence.
Yes. She just loves the world.
Yeah.
I think the reason I love her so much is she like loves the world in the way I think Joe loves the world, but she's very internal about it, whereas Joe is very external about it. And I'm a very internal person. So I just kind of gravitate towards seeing that depicted more. And she has that beautiful moment when they're on the beach, just her and Joe, after she has gotten sick again, and people know that she's probably not going to survive. And Joe is reading to her, and she talks about, I wish you would read something that you wrote. I miss hearing those. And Joe's like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to do that anymore. And she says, you are a writer even before anyone knew or paid you. She like sees the truest sense of self of Joe, which is that you have always been a writer. Even before anyone told you, oh, you're a good writer, that's what you were. And I think she knows within herself what she is and who she wants to be. And I just don't know if her family sees it the same way.
Yeah. I think that what is remarkable about Beth too is that she, I think, knows that as well. And she doesn't hold it against anyone, because ultimately she recognizes that she is, her sense of self that like is so inward looking. She experiences life in such an internalized way that perhaps her family could know her more, but because she is so inward looking, could they really? Does she want them to? You know, she's very emotionally private.
Yeah. And she is content to go over to Mr. Lawrence's house and play the piano She wants a confirmation that she's not going to be in anyone's way. So she's okay thinking, I'm just doing this for me. She doesn't need the satisfaction of knowing that Mr. Lawrence is around the corner listening and crying. Oh my God. Crying because her piano playing is so beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And it is filling his home with something that has been missing for a very long time. I'm like actually going to cry.
It's a really sweet moment. It's a really sweet moment.
I fucking lose it. I just like wasn't prepared for the emotional toll of the Beth Mr. Lawrence relationship in this movie the first time I watched it. And now it's my favorite thing about it.
Beth, definitely underrated. And I think she would like it that way. She would want it that way.
Yeah.
Like, she's like, I don't really need to be looked at. I don't want to be looked at. Which is a way of being, I find fascinating because it's the opposite of me in ways. It made me think of this comment made by the cook. What's her name? Hannah. When Joe has cut her hair and she walks in and her hair is cut and everyone's making little comments and Hannah just looks at her and she's like, this isn't what I wanted for her. It's just so funny.
It's so
like,
funny. This movie is so funny.
It really is. And the way that the dialogue is choreographed, like you were talking about, it makes it playful and it also makes it feel like you could take it to the stage as well. And it would evoke the same sense of story.
Right.
Even though the set design and everything is so beautiful and the places and the locations, like it's all so well put together. You could take it to the stage without any props and the dialogue alone. All of this would come through, I think. And I did think a lot about choreography watching this because everything feels choreographed.
Yes.
It's so intentional.
It is a movie, I think, that relies on blocking very much so, as opposed to just cutting it up in the editing room to make it fit together. It's like, no, in real time, we're going to block this right to keep it as fluid as possible.
Yeah.
Did you have anything else you wanted to add?
No, I think that's it.
I did just want to, like, something, I've just been, like, thinking about what is this movie saying? Duh. Obviously, we've been talking for 2 hours about things this movie is saying, but I guess, especially watching it this most recent time, and I'm only getting older, you know, so I'm always carrying that with me as I'm watching this movie that is very much about childhood and transitioning into adulthood. And I think it's so much about both the ways in which we stay the same or things stay the same, but also that the nature of family is that it's always going to be there, but it also must also always be changing in order to survive. And one of the moments I find so funny in this movie is when Amy has gotten hit by her teacher at school and she's walking home and she's crying outside the Lawrence house. And Laurie's like, there's a girl. And so she comes in and she's like looking around the house and she's looking at the art books. And then eventually the whole family comes in to pick her up. And so it's been this house with just these three men, Mr. Lawrence, Laurie, and then Mr. Brooke, the tutor. And it's not a warm house at that point in time. And all these women come in like a fucking tornado. And suddenly there's conversation and there's laughter and there's vibrancy and people are smiling. And then they leave and it's just the three men are left standing being like, they're kind of like, wow, what just happened? But also like, what do we do now? For like 5 minutes, their lives were so full. And then they've just sort of deflated again. And it's like, okay, back to it. And over the course of the movie, we're seeing these men. I need to choose my words carefully here. I might trip over myself a little bit, if you will forgive me. But they just, all three of these men slowly ingratiate themselves into the March household, right? And I don't say that in a bad way. It's like the marches make them feel welcome. After Beth has died, like all three of them are still in this march home. That scene where Mr. Lawrence talks to Joe and he's like, I'm sorry I haven't been over. It won't feel the same without her in the house. But then finally we do see him like in the house and Friedrich comes over and he plays the piano. And by the end of the movie, what started as three separate families technically have melded together into one. And I feel like the impetus for that was these women just showing up and being themselves and taking up space in this mansion and being like, hey, what's up? And these men being like, oh, wait, this will actually make my life better. I find that really compelling.
Well, and I think too, thinking about that scene when they all show up in the mansion to get Amy after her teacher hits her, what was coming to mind for me was the way they are interacting with the physical space. So they come in and Amy's like touching the books. They're touching the books. Joe's borrowing a book. They all sit on the couch. They're touching each other. Mm-hmm. And like in their home too, there are constant like elements. Like Beth has her doll and there's food and there's fabric. And when they're playing up in the attic, like they have their pipes and they have their like play clothes that they put on. And there's a real intimacy with the objects around them that the just mansion of men.
Yes.
They don't inhabit the space.
Right. Yes.
They're not inhabiting the space. They're just like walking through it. And the women come in and they're like,
you can touch this stuff.
Yes. Their spirit makes it alive.
Yeah. And okay, this is what I was trying to say. It made me think about that conversation we had when we talked about makeup and the boyfriend's really depressingly decorated apartment and how sociologically it makes sense that women are much more invested in making their private living spaces so personalized and warm, because that is where we go to be safe from the world that wants to kill us and do us harm. And so I feel like a lot of the men's journey in this movie is them understanding that in their own way and being like, oh, the space that these women have cultivated, it's not that they're co-opting it. I'm not accusing anyone of that, but they're like, oh, we can like model our behavior after them.
Mm-hmm.
And my home doesn't just have to be this ornate object of wealth and architectural greatness. It can be an actual fucking home. And so that the way the households interplay together, I was really noticing that this time. I don't think I'd ever noticed that before.
I feel like this conversation and the things like we're both saying about the ways space is being like taken up or not taken up or being interacted with and the intimacy of it, lack of intimacy. I keep thinking like, what are we moving towards? But like, that's it. That is the crux of what I am interested in. It is compelling to consider the domestic space. And part of the point of this fucking book having been written is that the domestic space is a compelling thing to write about and is a compelling thing to consider. We don't have to be saying something more. And I feel inside of me like this impulse to be like, well, what are we saying? What are we really saying? No, we've already said it.
Right.
It's compelling enough.
Yes. And that's why I love the scene of the publisher who he initially writes off to his manuscript and is like, yeah, no, we don't want to publish this. And then you get this scene where his young daughters have found the book in his desk and they bring it to him and they're like, where is the rest of this book, Dad? We want to read it. We want the Little Women. And it's like, oh yeah, this middle-aged dude maybe doesn't know what young girls will be interested in reading about. And then that's what ends up getting Joe's books published. And I really do. I was thinking about just the movies Greta Gerwig has made, because she's only directed 3, Lady Bird, this, and then Barbie. And I do feel like all 3 of those movies are about fundamentally the radical change that is able to happen to a single person within the domestic sphere. Because so much of Lady Bird is just like 1 year of this senior in high school living at home and fighting with her parents and not knowing who she is. And Barbie is like, what if you stayed in the same place your whole life and had an existential crisis about it? So you left and then came back radically altered. And then this movie is like, what if every single meaningful thing in your life can be traced back to the home where you grew up? And that's enough.
Yeah. Putting this in conversation with her other movies too. We've been talking for a long time. So I think I just want to put the idea out there that is making me think about the mother figures in each of those films. So like in Lady Bird, it's sort of like mother as antagonist, which is something archetypal mother-daughter relationship that we've talked about before. Yeah. And then in the Barbie movie, we get a little bit of that, but I really think, I would argue that the idea of like mother is much bigger and is really in terms of like mother as creator of the world that you live in.
You mean when she goes and she meets the woman who invented Barbie? Yeah.
Yes. And so I think that's really the overarching archetype at play in Barbie. And in in Little Women, it's just mother as a friend, mother as a presence.
Mother as supportive mentor.
Yes. And I think it's just like a really beautiful thing that Gerwig has been able to give us, these all equally true portrayals of the nature of motherhood and daughterhood and how they converge and diverge over time. Yeah.
I agree. Well said. Okay. I think it's a good place to end.
Yeah.
What does this movie make you want to tell your younger self?
So this movie, in bringing up that scene where Jo is in the attic talking to her mother about being lonely, it just occurred to me, like literally just now when you asked that in this moment, that whenever you've asked me that question, I have thought about my younger self, I think always as like a teenage version or childhood version. But this makes me think of my younger self as a 28-year-old or a 29-year-old, which now I'm 37. Like that's going on a decade ago at this point. And so as I get older, my younger self is also getting older. And as I get older, that means my younger self's understanding of her mother is also more empathetic to her experiences as a full human, because I didn't really know that my mother was a full human being until I was like probably in my mid-20s, when I really started thinking about like, holy shit, wait a second, she's a whole person with a whole life that existed before us. I mean, I always knew that, but I didn't really know it until I really became an adult myself. And I think that what I would just tell my younger self is that in some ways, my mother will always be an antagonist in my story, but she will also always be the creator of my story. Literally, I came from her. And she will also always be like, this almost makes me want to get emotional, which is embarrassing because I don't have, it's complicated. She will also always be the person that is most supportive of me and the things that I want for my life, even when it doesn't feel like it, even when what she wants for me is at odds with what I want for myself. Sometimes it takes some coming around for her to understand why I might want certain things for myself. But once she does, she really supports me in that endeavor. And it's really a beautiful thing. And that's something I didn't understand until probably within the last few years. So this is me talking to my 25-year-old self instead of my 15-year-old self. I usually do. Yeah.
That was beautiful. Pat. That's her name.
Yeah.
Mrs. Dillo.
Well, nobody says
I
that.
don't know.
Yeah.
I've only met her a few times, so she probably wouldn't remember that she's met me, which is okay.
It's hard to know because she will never admit if she doesn't remember meeting a friend of mine. She's like, "Oh yeah, of course. How is she? She's so." So it's hard to know.
That's so sweet though that she tries to just.
She might. The thing is, she might, but she might. It's anyone's guess.
Anyways.
Yeah.
But she's obviously a great woman because she raised you, and you're great.
Thanks.
You're welcome. I want to tell my younger self. I want to speak to the younger version who was seeing this movie for the first time. I think I would tell her. She would have been 21. I would just tell her that this movie will always be there for her. And that's really lucky. That's it.
I love that.
Okay. Thank you so much for listening. Rate, review, subscribe. Turn on notifications on your podcast listening platform of choice. Follow us on Instagram, though I've been really bad about maintaining it. Girlhood Movie Database. Special shout out to Rachel Ann Morris. Are they okay with us putting their name on this? If not, we can take it out.
I'll ask.
Shout out to the artist who did our new cover art. You can follow them on Instagram. We'll have that link down below. And
that's it. That's it.
Own your story.
Oh, yeah.
Own your story. Don't burn anyone's manuscripts.
No.
Even if they have it saved as a PDF on their computer, the principle of it is still unacceptable.
Truly. And I'll never forgive you personally.
Yes. And stay tuned for next episode. We're going to watch the new adaptation of Hedda Gabler called Hedda. It will be very juicy and delicious, I hope. And dramatic.
Been listening to the audiobook of the play, acted out, and can totally see how you can make that gay.
Yeah. There's some gender swap
right
happening.
there.
Yep.
So
we are getting into it.
Yeah. All right.
Okay.
Bye.